I'm more happier today with James Gunn's involvement with this Superman film than I have been since the day he was announced in writing and directing this Superman movie, since hearing all his quotes from his press briefing from this Superman movie. Yes, several months ago during the production of this Superman film, James Gunn sat down with the press, invited them onto the set and answered a lot of their questions. And I really liked what he had to say. Yes, the marketing for James Gunn's Superman film has begun. And yes, he's obviously going to be on the charm offensive, as Bryan Singer was in 2006, as Zack Snyder was in 2013. Every director, every high-profile director is media trained, and I understand that. That doesn't change the fact that what he had to say, and the release yesterday of all his quotes about his Superman movie really finally got me to relax about his involvement in this Superman film, got me really hyped for the first time and excited for what this Superman film can be. So I've written down some of the things that he's had to say, and we're going to go through them. One thing and one character he didn't mention at all was Jimmy Olsen. Now, even though he's given us a bigger insight into this Superman movie, finally, he still hasn't revealed the plot of this movie. It could be that Jimmy Olsen plays a bigger part in this movie than we think. And maybe James Gunn is hiding that. I love Jimmy Olsen. I always believe that he's the way into a Superman story because he's this young school leaver working for the biggest metropolitan newspaper in the world and becoming the first superheroes, Superman's best pal. I think that's an amazing thing. I hope he's got the watch. Anyway, let's get into this. One of the first things that I really liked was the whole thing on whether Superman should wear trunks or not in James Gunn's movie in this brand new costume. Now, James tested many costumes with and without the trunks. Zack Snyder did the same thing, but claimed none of the ones with trunks actually worked. And James Gunn wasn't sold on Superman wearing trunks. I'm surprised about that, because if you remember when we were talking about whether Superman would wear trunks or not in this movie, I said they were going to make a much more traditional Superman movie than Man of Steel. I always believed the trunks were going to be on the costume, and I was right. But it was actually Superman actor David Corenswet that persuaded James to go with the trunks. He said Superman is an alien with great powers. He has, heat vision. He has powers that can scare anyone. So he wears a costume of a professional wrestler so people aren't afraid of him. This was David's take, and it's a great take, by the way. There's a huge debate amongst Superman fans. The hardcore Superman fans were very angry that in Man of Steel and in the Snyderverse and in the DCEU that Superman didn't have trunks. My take on the trunks or no trunks debate has always been, I was fine with Superman not wearing the trunks with the Cavill Superman, but I'm also fine with the trunks being back. Ultimately, the trunks were there from the very beginning. With the trunks, when you're designing the costume, you've got to make sure they don't look too stupid. James Gunn also said he thinks it's silly to take Superman's costume too seriously. It is what it is. You may as well go with it. I kind of agree with that, but I still don't think that it was a problem in Man of Steel and in the Snyderverse and in the DCEU that they took the trunks away. But I'm also very happy that the trunks are back. I think we live in a highly emotional state these days where people take positions. In terms of the trunks, I never thought it was a big deal. If you take the trunks away from him, as long as the costume looks great without them, I'm fine with it. The Man of Steel costume, the one in Man of Steel is my favourite version of Henry's costume. It looks great without the trunks. And so let's have a look on my bit of paper so I don't forget anything. So now we also got a huge description of the full trailer. If you don't want to know anything about this trailer, please look away now. So there's a moment, by the way, that Superman is weak. He's crash landed in the Arctic. He's injured. Something's happened. I think he's had a fight with the engineer. Now, I didn't know this, but apparently the engineer can also fly. Very, very exciting. So he whistles for Krypto in the trailer and he says, "Take me home." So that's a little bit of a spoiler. By the way, I can't remember everything, every detail from this trailer, from the trailer description. But from what I read, I'm really excited now for this teaser trailer. Now, later on today, 4 p.m. my time, I think, is it 6 a.m. PST, they're going to give us a teaser of the teaser, which is something I thought they wasn't going to do. I'm not a fan of that, but never mind. It's exciting. I'll have it on repeat all day. My trailer reaction, as I said on my post over on YouTube, will be on Friday because at night, my camera's not very good. Anyway, so that's exciting. Now, he talks about Lois and Clark's and Superman's relationship. He talks about Lois Lane being a skeptical, headstrong woman, reporter, and how complex that relationship's going to be. He said the way he's done the relationship has never been done in a film before. I like writer-directors going at this material in different ways, in new angles. So that's good. This is a good one. Now, I'm not a big reader of comics, but I have gone back, especially during the Smallville era, because I was obsessed with their Lex Luthor. And I used to like the old idea of Lex Luthor being a mad scientist. So James talks about, Lex being a great scientist as well as businessman. And James pretty much calls him, saying he's like a sorcerer because he's so good at science. So that kind of gives you the potential. He could create something so dangerous. And that's part of the problem of this movie. I still have a suspicion for Brainiac in this movie. But again, I could be wrong. As I keep on saying, it's okay to be wrong. Anyway, now this is very exciting. Now, I spoke about the flying sequences. I keep on talking about how Donna shot the flying. How the flying was mostly shot on a soundstage, of course, with a back screen projector. And it still looks amazing to this day, especially that moment when Superman's flying after the rocket. That still looks some of the best Superman flying I've ever seen in live action. But he talks about being inspired from Top Gun Maverick and how they shot the flying sequences in that film. Now, he says they used drones. They actually used drones in the air on a soundstage to do the flying. So they actually had people piloting these drones. So I think basically they're shooting the flying from the drones. What this means is instead of using CGI to implement the flying, like Snyder did a lot, and of course how Singer did it. Now, I'm not sure that I really liked Bryan Singer's flying in Superman Returns. I certainly like the flying when he saves the aeroplane. That's awesome. But I wasn't overly impressed with the flying in Superman Returns. Man of Steel did the flying better, but I still don't think anyone's done the flying in live action as good as Dick Donner did in 1978. But I think Smallville in the episode Crusade, the season 4 premiere when Clark flies as Kal-El for the first time, that was great, by the way. But again, that's all CG. So it's clear mostly they're not going to be using CG for the flying, but obviously they'll touch it up with CG. So that, my friends, again, is very, very exciting. And this is something else I really approve of. Now, John Murphy as a composer is an unknown quantity. I only know his music from the Suicide Squad. I actually really enjoyed his music from the Suicide Squad, but when he was announced to be doing the Superman score, I was wondering and asking, can this guy give us memorable music? From the emotion poster for Superman and the music that was attached to it, we can see that he will give us something memorable. Now, someone on YouTube, on a YouTube video, actually said that music could be Lara humming the Baby Kal-El to sleep on the planet Krypton. If that's true, that would be brilliant. And this would be genius from James Gunn. Something very emotional, because it's an emotional piece of music, isn't it? Well, James Gunn has said that Superman is a score-driven movie rather than playing radio music and songs. I'm very happy about that. He said he's chosen 3 or 4 songs for the movie, and that's fine. I'm okay with that, but as I said the other day, I'm a symphonic score man, right? I like a proper score. So this is a score-driven movie with score music, a composed music, rather than, a soundtrack and needle drops. So I'm really happy about that as well. So James Gunn says that this movie is less funny than his other comic book movies. I'm happy about that. I always knew that James Gunn would go at this movie very seriously. He says it's a very grounded movie. It is funny. Superman's funny. Lois is funny sometimes and all of that. But it's also a very serious, grounded movie. And I'm happy about that. Now, apparently the trailer ends with Lois and Clark holding hands, looking up in the sky. That sounds really, really cool, and I can't wait to see that. James Gunn says that there's action from the start of this movie, and I think this is something that Superman Returns really could have done with. Now, Man of Steel, introduces us straight from the back into Krypton. There's an action scene with, Jor-El and Jor-El and Zod fighting and all of that. So that's really action focused from the start. He says he's been Superman for a year. Lex Luthor hates Superman, but they've never met personally. Now this had my fellow Smallville fans, because I'm a huge Smallville fan, saying, isn't it a shame that Lex and Clark are not going to weren't friends as youngsters in this story? But that doesn't necessarily compute to me, because it doesn't mean that Clark and Lex haven't met. He just says that Superman and Lex Luthor have never met and don't know each other personally. It doesn't mean that Clark and Lex don't know each other personally, but even if they don't, that's fine. What Smallville did with the Clark-Lex friendship was something utterly unique and very, very special. It doesn't mean it has to be repeated. Smallville broke a lot of Superman canon for the better, and it worked on Smallville. And, James Gunn is going to have his own take, so I'm fine with that. There's a big role for Mr. Terrific in this movie. Now, there's a lot of DC characters in here. James Gunn says they don't play as big a role as Mr. Terrific, but they're not cameos, and they get their moments. But Mr. Terrific having this big role is fine with me. I don't know much about Mr. Terrific. I've never really read him in the comics. I did watch him in Arrow, which he was pretty cool. He's supposed to be really, really clever, isn't he? So, yeah, look, for me, all this stuff, and I'm sure I've missed some stuff as well, but as I say, all these quotes, the description of the trailer has got me excited finally. It's made me more optimistic about this film, and there's something else that he said that I didn't write down there. He talked about the debate. Some people believe that Clark is the real character. Some believe that Superman is the real character. But James Gunn said he wrote on the second page of his script that neither Clark or Superman are the main character. You need to know Superman and Clark to know the character. And I absolutely agree with that, because Superman and Clark basically are the same person at the end of the day. He said there's a few people who know Superman and Clark Kent are the same person. When asked if Lois knows that if Superman's Clark Kent, he wouldn't really tell us, but it sounds like she doesn't know quite yet that he's Superman, and we may see that revealed by the end of the movie. We may not. I'm fine with that. The way they did it with Amy Adams, Lois in Man of Steel was really, really cool. Now, I love Man of Steel, but it really wasn't interested in telling the love story, going deep into the love story between Clark and Lois or Superman and Lois. Yes, they fall in love in Man of Steel, but it's done really, really quickly. This isn't on Goya, Nolan or Zack Snyder, this was the studio. It was the studio that wanted all that destruction in Man of Steel and action because the general audience found Superman Returns boring. It was the studio that didn't want, Man of Steel to spend too much time on the romance because the general audience found the Lois and Clark romance element boring as well. So this is why Man of Steel ended up being the type of film that it was. So, yeah, as I say, I am very, very excited after hearing all of this. None of this means that Superman's going to be a great movie because of everything that's been said, but it does make me more optimistic. And it proves, because he's talking about the film. He's not lying. He's speaking about the film. So, and the way he talks about how he made the film, one reporter said he was very tired when they were talking to him. He wasn't in a good mood. And by the way, he even said that he feels the pressure of this movie. He knows how important it is. He says if Superman fails, then nothing else can come after it, really, he said, even though they've got plans for this and that. Obviously, Peacemaker 2 will be released. Obviously, Supergirl will be released. Obviously, Lanterns will be released. But after that, if Superman fails, it's going to go away very, very quickly. But I'm starting to believe that maybe we've got a great Superman film on our hands, and maybe James Gunn has a big hit. Could this be James Gunn's first $1 billion movie?